You have been searching because you believed something essential was missing, yet the fracture was never in life but in identification. The moment awareness steps out of the character, the entire psychological machinery loses its authority. What you were chasing dissolves not because you found it, but because the seeker collapses into what has always been here. Stay with this rupture and let it finish its work, because once this is seen, there is no returning to the old illusion. The first thing you notice each morning is not the room but the voice already moving inside you, forming judgments before your eyes fully open. There is a quiet tension when you realize the next thought arrives without permission, like a breath taken before you decide to inhale. What you call reality is already shaped by this inner movement, filtered through structures that operate faster than awareness. The mind feels seamless, yet something inside senses a subtle fracture between what appears and what is chosen. If the thought comes before you, where exactly does your experience begin? As the day unfolds, reactions appear instantly, and the body tightens before any clear reason forms. This creates unease because emotions seem to belong to the world, yet they originate closer than the skin. Experience is never raw, it is translated by the psyche before it feels external. Once this is seen, a small steadiness appears, as if the breath settles without being controlled. Reality is not contacted directly, it is always mediated, and this is the condition you are already living inside. Imagine standing still while a sound startles you, and your shoulders lift before thought explains why. In that brief moment, the body has already decided what the event means. The psyche processes sensation first, assigning threat or safety before awareness arrives. When you notice this delay, something softens, like air moving through a narrow space. If meaning is assigned before you arrive, what part of experience is truly yours to command? Later, while checking a message or watching numbers change on a screen, irritation rises without invitation. The tension feels justified, yet it forms before you consciously interpret the situation. Your inner world frames the moment first, then presents it as objective fact. Seeing this creates a quiet pause, and the breath lengthens as the compulsion loosens. How many moments feel imposed from outside when they are assembled within you first? By the end of the day, you sense that life has been happening through an unseen lens you did not design. This recognition carries weight because it reveals how little of experience is neutral or untouched. Objective reality remains distant while perception fills the gap with structure and habit. Accepting this does not collapse you, it stabilizes the mind by naming the mechanism. If reality is always filtered, what happens when you begin to watch the filter instead of the scene? The moment awareness surfaces, the mind is already speaking, narrating before the body has fully arrived. There is tension in realizing the next thought appears on its own, like a breath taken before choice intervenes. This reveals that what is experienced as reality is always pre-shaped by inner processes moving faster than conscious intent. The recognition settles quietly, as if light passes through a fine fracture without resistance. If perception begins before you decide, where does authorship truly reside? As attention moves through the day, reactions surface instantly, tightening the chest before any explanation forms. The discomfort grows when it becomes clear that emotion claims to belong to events, yet arises prior to them. Reality is never met directly, it is filtered through the psyche before it feels external. Noticing this creates a subtle grounding, like the breath finding its rhythm without effort. If every moment is pre-interpreted, what part of experience is actually untouched? Picture the body flinching at a sudden sound, shoulders lifting before thought names the cause. In that brief instant, meaning has already been assigned without consultation. The psyche operates as a silent translator, converting sensation into significance before awareness arrives. Seeing this brings calm rather than fear, like shadow revealing the shape of the light around it. If interpretation precedes awareness, what are you responding to in each moment? Later, while staring at a screen or watching time slip by, irritation rises without invitation. The tension feels justified, yet it forms before any conscious reasoning appears. Inner structures frame the moment first, then present it as objective fact. When this is seen, the breath steadies and the compulsion loosens its grip. How often does life seem imposed from outside when it is assembled within? By evening, a quiet realization lingers that experience has been moving through an unseen lens all day. This carries weight because it exposes how little of perception is neutral or raw. What feels like the world is always the psyche in contact with itself. Allowing this truth stabilizes the mind rather than destabilizing it. If reality is always filtered, what changes when attention turns toward the filter instead of the scene? You do not live inside the world as it is, you move inside a version shaped silently by your inner life. There is unease in sensing that events feel personal even before you decide how to respond to them. According to Jung, the psyche generates a private reality more influential than external conditions. When this lands, the breath slows, as if something heavy has been named at last. If life is happening through you rather than to you, what exactly are you walking inside each day? Moments carry emotional color that seems inherent, yet that tone was present before the moment arrived. This creates tension because joy, threat, or meaning feels assigned rather than chosen. The psyche operates like a simulation engine, constructing significance from memory and expectation. Seeing this stabilizes attention, like standing still while the scenery moves. If the meaning precedes the moment, where does the moment itself exist? Notice how the same situations repeat their emotional signature no matter the setting. The familiarity feels comforting and disturbing at once, as if time loops quietly beneath variety. Psychic reality persists because it is reinforced internally, not because the world insists on it. When this becomes visible, something unclenches in the chest. Are you encountering new events, or the same inner pattern wearing different faces? At work or in conversation, reactions unfold with predictable timing, like music already written. The tension comes from realizing the script feels external while it is internally authored. Life responds to the meanings you carry, not the facts you encounter. This insight settles gently, allowing a brief silence between reaction and response. What would shift if that silence widened? There is responsibility hidden inside this recognition, quiet but unavoidable. You are not trapped in events. You are moving inside a psychic landscape you participate in sustaining. Jung did not offer blame, only orientation toward awareness. Letting this settle feels like standing at the edge of a doorway you have passed through unconsciously for years. If this inner world is the stage, who have you been mistaking for the author? The unconscious does not wait quietly beneath awareness. It presses outward, shaping what you meet. There is tension in sensing that moods, encounters, and reactions appear as if staged ahead of time. The psyche behaves less like a container and more like a projector, casting inner material onto the surface of life. When this is noticed, the breath steadies, and the pressure to explain everything softens. If what appears outside is already moving from within, what are you actually responding to? You feel this when someone's words land harder than their meaning should allow. The discomfort comes from reacting to something larger than the moment itself. The unconscious cannot speak directly, so it communicates through images, people, and emotional charges. Seeing this creates a quiet pause, like light crossing a thin crack without resistance. What if the intensity you feel belongs to what is being shown, not what is happening? At times the projection becomes impossible to ignore, like recognizing your reflection moving where you expected another face. There is a brief rupture when you realize the outer scene is carrying inner content you did not know how to hold. This is the moment the projector reveals itself, not through theory but through lived disturbance. Stay with that sensation for one full breath without explaining it away. If the image dissolves when observed, what remains when you do not chase it? Daily life offers small screens for this process, from conversations to silent judgments formed in passing. The tension lies in how convincing these projections feel, as if reality itself is confirming them. The unconscious chooses the symbols, consciousness believes the story. Letting this register brings a grounded calm, like standing still while movement continues around you. How often do you mistake the screen for the source? Once this mechanism is glimpsed, the grip of circumstances loosens without effort. You are not asked to fight the projection, only to recognize it as movement. The unconscious loses its need to dramatize when it is seen clearly. Allow attention to rest on the feeling before it becomes a narrative. If projection fades under awareness, what part of life has been waiting for you to notice it? If this is hitting close to home, take a second, like the video, subscribe, and stay with me. Certain patterns return with unsettling precision, wearing different faces yet carrying the same emotional weight. The tension builds when effort changes but outcomes feel strangely familiar, as if something underneath is steering. What looks like bad luck is often unconscious direction, repeating until it is recognized. This realization settles the nervous system, like a breath finally released after being held too long. If repetition is guidance rather than punishment, what has been asking for your attention all along? Relationships echo each other in tone even when the people are new. The discomfort comes from sensing predictability where novelty was expected. Unseen programs replay themselves because they are structured to seek confirmation. When this is understood, blame loosens its grip and clarity replaces frustration. Are these events random, or are they rehearsals for recognition? Notice how the body responds before the story forms, a tightening in the chest or a subtle withdrawal. There is tension in feeling pulled toward the same emotional endings despite conscious intentions. The unconscious repeats not to trap you, but to surface what remains unseen. Let your attention rest on the sensation before labeling it, and observe it for a single slow breath. If the pattern pauses when watched, what is it trying to show rather than enforce? Work, money, and time often become stages where repetition plays out quietly. The unease grows when different circumstances lead to the same internal result. Fate is often the name given to structure operating outside awareness. Seeing this brings a grounded steadiness, like standing on firm ground after drifting. What changes when you stop arguing with the pattern and start reading it? Repetition loses its power once its direction is acknowledged. The pattern does not dissolve through force but through understanding. When the message is received, the need to repeat diminishes naturally. This recognition stabilizes the mind without demanding immediate action. If repetition ends when meaning is integrated, what cycle has been waiting for you to listen rather than resist? You do not encounter others directly, you meet them through an emotional lens already in place. There is tension in realizing how quickly attraction or aversion forms before facts are known. Projection is the primary mechanism shaping experience, assigning inner material to outer figures. When this is recognized, the breath eases, as if pressure leaves the chest. If perception carries borrowed content, who are you actually seeing? Strong reactions feel immediate and justified, arriving with heat or pull before reflection. The unease comes from how convincing these responses feel, as if reality itself confirms them. The psyche externalizes what it cannot yet integrate, using people as mirrors without asking permission. Seeing this steadies attention, like light settling on a surface without glare. When emotion spikes, what inner element is seeking a place to appear? Notice how certain faces seem to glow or darken the moment they enter awareness. The tension intensifies because the reaction feels personal while being impersonal in origin. Projection paints qualities onto others to preserve inner balance. Allow the image to linger without pursuit, and feel the breath return to center. If the color fades when watched, where did it truly come from? In ordinary moments, passing glances, brief exchanges, silent judgments, the mechanism operates quietly. The discomfort lies in how natural it feels to mistake reflection for fact. Experience is shaped less by who stands before you and more by what moves within you. Let this settle, like water becoming still after disturbance. How many conclusions are formed by reflection rather than contact? When projection is seen as movement, not truth, its hold loosens on its own. The pattern does not demand suppression, only recognition. Awareness integrates what was displaced, and the outer charge softens. This realization grounds the mind without effort or defense. If seeing changes the experience, what has awareness been waiting to reclaim? Conflict often feels irrational because its intensity exceeds the situation at hand. There is tension in sensing anger rise faster than reason, as if something older has been touched. Shadow projection explains this excess by revealing how rejected traits are assigned to others. When this is seen, the breath deepens and the heat begins to disperse. What part of yourself feels threatened when someone provokes such force? The qualities that disturb you most are rarely random. The discomfort sharpens when envy, arrogance, or cruelty appears to live entirely outside you. What is denied internally must appear externally to remain visible. Let this land quietly, like shadow defining the edge of light without accusation. If the trait lives only out there, why does it disturb you so deeply? You feel this in moments of disproportionate reaction, when a comment lingers far longer than it should. The tension grows because the mind insists the problem belongs to the other person. The shadow carries what the ego refuses to identify with, and it demands recognition through conflict. Noticing this softens the posture and slows the breath. What would happen if the reaction were treated as information rather than proof? Every unresolved inner fracture seeks a surface to press against. The unease of conflict persists because the fight is misdirected toward the reflection. Shadow projection turns inner rejection into outer war. When this is understood, the compulsion to dominate or withdraw loosens. Are you resisting the person, or the trait they are carrying for you? When the shadow is acknowledged internally, conflict loses its urgency. The need to attack fades because the message has been received. Integration does not require approval, only ownership. This recognition stabilizes the mind, like standing still while echoes die out. If no one needs to carry your shadow anymore, who becomes free in that exchange? Romantic obsession arrives with a sweetness that feels destined, as if something missing has finally appeared. There is tension in how quickly the other becomes charged with meaning beyond what they have shown. Infatuation is the projection of unlived potential, casting your own dormant qualities onto another. When this is seen, the heart steadies and the breath deepens without effort. If the glow comes from within, what exactly are you falling toward? The intensity feels personal, urgent, and consuming, as though time narrows around one figure. The unease grows when you notice how little information is required to sustain such devotion. The psyche elevates the other into a screen for inner possibilities not yet embodied. Let this settle gently, like light dimming without disappearing. What part of yourself has been waiting for permission to exist? You notice this when disappointment arrives suddenly, without clear cause. The tension sharpens because nothing concrete has changed, yet the magic collapses. The projection dissolves when reality cannot hold the imagined weight. Stay with the feeling for one full breath instead of blaming the person. If the illusion fades, what remains unfinished inside you? The body often senses this before the mind accepts it, a hollow feeling in the chest or a drop in warmth. The discomfort lies in realizing the longing never truly belonged to the other. Romantic fixation reveals where energy was displaced rather than developed. Allow this understanding to land, grounding you back into yourself. If the desire points inward, what direction has it been indicating all along? When projection is reclaimed, attraction transforms from obsession into clarity. The charge weakens because the stolen qualities return to their source. This does not diminish connection, it purifies it. Recognition restores agency without bitterness or collapse. If what you sought was always yours, what changes about the search itself? Complexes operate beneath awareness, quietly influencing what you notice and what you miss. There is tension in realizing that certain situations seem to assemble themselves around familiar emotional outcomes. A complex behaves like an inner personality, organizing perception and behavior to confirm its story. When this is recognized, the breath steadies, as if pressure releases from a sealed space. If patterns keep forming on their own, who has been arranging the conditions? You see this when the same conflict appears with different people, wearing new details but the same conclusion. The discomfort sharpens because effort feels sincere while results feel pre-selected. Complexes seek expression, not resolution, and they shape circumstances to remain active. Let this settle without resistance, like a mirror held still long enough to reveal depth. What outcome feels inevitable because it has been rehearsed internally? There are moments when the body reacts before the scene fully arrives, a clench in the jaw or a step back without thought. The tension lives in sensing that the response belongs to an older emotional imprint. A complex manufactures relevance by pulling the present into alignment with the past. Notice the sensation before it becomes explanation, and stay with it for one slow breath. If the reaction loosens when observed, what loses its authority? Everyday life becomes the workshop where complexes refine their influence through schedules, messages, and small decisions. The unease grows when you see how easily circumstances comply with inner expectations. What feels like coincidence is often alignment between inner demand and outer selection. Allow this understanding to ground you, like feet settling firmly on the floor. Where have you mistaken manufacture for fate? When a complex is clearly named, it loses the energy required to organize events. Awareness interrupts its autonomy without confrontation or force. This is not control but illumination, and it changes the direction of movement. Let this recognition rest in you before seeking improvement or repair. If attention alone dissolves the pattern, what has been waiting for you to notice rather than manage it? Unconscious control persists only while it remains unseen, operating smoothly in the dark. There is tension in realizing how many actions feel chosen while being automatically generated. A pattern holds power only until consciousness turns toward it without resistance. When this is recognized, the body softens, like breath returning after strain. If awareness is present, what exactly continues to compel you? The moment a projection or complex is clearly observed, its urgency weakens. The discomfort fades because the psyche no longer needs to dramatize to be heard. Conscious attention interrupts automatic repetition without effort or suppression. Let this understanding settle, allowing silence to replace urgency. What changes when observation replaces reaction? You sense this shift when an old trigger appears and fails to ignite. The tension dissolves because the pattern has lost its stage. Awareness removes the fuel that unconscious processes require to perform. This does not erase the pattern, it deprives it of control. If the script no longer runs, what remains of the role? This clarity does not demand struggle, discipline, or forceful correction. The relief comes from realizing that seeing is sufficient for release. Consciousness dissolves compulsion simply by being present. Allow this to anchor you, like standing still while currents pass. How many struggles have been sustained by not being seen? There is a quiet responsibility hidden in this recognition, simple and direct. Awareness is not passive, it participates by illuminating. When you notice this in your own life, let it register fully and allow it to change how you listen inwardly. Share this recognition by marking your awareness in a single word, not as agreement but as presence. If consciousness ends unconscious control, what happens when many begin to see at once? Suffering persists when identity collapses inward and hardens around the character you believe yourself to be. There is tension in how every problem feels personal, immediate, and heavy, as if the entire weight of life presses on a single point. Ego identification locks awareness into the psychological movie, mistaking the role for the screen. When this is seen, the breath lengthens and the pressure in the chest loosens slightly. If the pain belongs to the character, who is the one noticing it? The mind defends its story reflexively, tightening when circumstances threaten its image. The discomfort grows because every challenge feels like an attack on who you are. The ego survives by ownership, claiming experiences as proof of identity. Let this settle without resistance, like shadow revealing the edge of light. What happens when identity stops gripping each moment? There are moments when suffering continues even after problems are resolved. The tension comes from realizing the struggle was not situational but structural. Identification keeps pain alive by revisiting it, narrating it, and calling it self. Notice the body now, the posture, the jaw, the breath, and feel how identification shapes sensation. If the story pauses, what remains of the suffering? Shifting identification does not remove difficulty, it changes proximity. The relief arrives quietly when awareness steps back and the problem moves from center stage to the periphery. The self observes the movie without being trapped inside it. This recognition stabilizes attention, like standing still while a storm passes nearby. Pain still appears, but it no longer defines or possesses you. This shift carries a subtle responsibility that cannot be outsourced. You choose, again and again, whether to merge with the character or remain as the witness. Awareness does not eliminate suffering, it dissolves ownership of it. Let this recognition be marked inwardly, not as belief but as acknowledgement, and allow others to recognize the same signal in themselves. If suffering fades when identity loosens, what becomes possible when many stop mistaking the role for the screen? Seeking persists because the ego believes fulfillment exists somewhere ahead, just out of reach. There is tension in the constant forward pull, the sense that something essential is missing now. The search continues because identity is fused with becoming rather than being. When this is seen, the breath settles and the urgency softens without effort. If the seeker is the movement itself, what exactly is being sought? Every desire promises arrival, yet the feeling of incompletion survives each achievement. The unease deepens when satisfaction fades faster than expected. The ego sustains itself through pursuit, using lack as its fuel. Let this land gently, like light revealing an empty doorway that was never locked. If fulfillment dissolves on contact, where has the search been pointing all along? You notice moments when the urge to seek pauses unexpectedly, perhaps while standing still or exhaling fully. The tension breaks because nothing is being added or removed in that instant. Seeking collapses when awareness rests as itself rather than moving toward an image. Allow that stillness to register before thought resumes. What disappears when the search stops moving? The mind often resists this recognition, fearing disappearance or stagnation. The discomfort arises because the ego equates stillness with loss of identity. Yet what ends is not life, but the compulsion to chase it. This understanding stabilizes attention, like standing at the horizon without needing to cross it. If nothing needs to be added, what has always been present? When seeking ends, experience does not vanish, it clarifies. Life continues, but without the friction of becoming someone else. The ego relaxes its grip as awareness recognizes itself as sufficient. This realization carries no drama, only quiet finality. If the search was never required, what changes about this moment now? The search does not end by acquisition but by recognition, when awareness stops outsourcing itself to the future. You can feel this now as a loosening, a subtle return from the edges of becoming to the center of being. Let this insight remain active by noticing the next urge to seek as it forms, staying with the breath instead of the promise. If the end of seeking is available in this moment, what has been guiding you elsewhere? Carry this clarity into ordinary hours, into work, relationships, and quiet pauses, and watch how the inner movie loses its grip. Revisit this recognition when tension appears, letting attention rest where the story cannot survive. Mark this shift by returning to it daily, and allow others to recognize it through your presence rather than explanation. As this stabilizes, are you willing to explore what awareness reveals when nothing is being chased next?